Thinking about the 2-4 disconnect on politics, policing, and the pulpit? Wondering, can bringing generational disconnects lead to a stronger Bahamas? Pause, think about it with intentional thought, and consider where we go from here. Abraham Lincoln once said, the philosophy of the classroom in one generation will lead to the philosophy of government in the next. We are now 2+ generations removed, and the divide seemingly increasing. Tune in to hear what University of Bahamas Eden Bethell and Dalen Miles got to say about the youth's perspective on challenges and how we can build unity to move the 242 forward, upward, onward, together.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative, 242.
Welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. And today we have two bright young minds on the show who will move us and make us think about it with intentional thought. And then consider where we got to go from here. Because they come in. You know, not like Roots and all them people, but they come in. Welcome. Eden and Dalen, how are you all today?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
Awesome.
Good, thanks.
You can hear us, Dalen?
Can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great.
All right, so
awesome. These people a little bit about yourself, what you're studying, why you are engaged in culture and things going on in the Bahamas. Because today, you know, there's a lot of the old people, you know, them people older than me, you know, like young like y'all, but who think that the young people are disengaged, not interested in nothing, and just on TikTok or on whatever else goes on. You can start with you, Eden.
Okay, so my name is Eden Bethell. I'm a senior a university student at the University of the Bahamas. I'm currently studying biology with a major in chemistry. How I personally got into thinking more about our society was through sociology classes, my electives. Before this, I was not one to think about what was going on in our society, but I really appreciate the elective classes that I had because even English, it allowed me to explore further into the things that are happening around us, which is very important for personal growth and societal growth.
Cool. Dylan, the Bahamian climate activist.
Yes, that's what I'd consider myself. If I would introduce myself, my name is Dylan Miles. I'm a recent graduate of the University of the Bahamas. Yes, I'm very happy. I like my time at the University of the Bahamas. I am well aware of like all the problems that they have as a school, but I did enjoy my time there as a psychology major. Eden mentioned earlier like taking Eden up there mentioned taking sociology classes. I remember taking sociology with a Mrs. Jessica, I can't remember the last name. Jessica Russell. Oh, it was a great class, and it was one of many. Okay. Like I took psychology, which I'd say was very heavy with classes that helped like politically socialize me to like understand and be more critical even of like the Bahamian landscape. So I really enjoyed my time at UB taking those kinds of classes. Special topics, Black psychology, Indigenous psychology was a really great class for like understanding uniquely how things like the impact of hurricanes affects us in our culture. Like, you know, things that you think about like that. And I love having conversations about that kind of thing. So I'm happy to be here with the two of you.
Cool. That's awesome. So, It mentioned in the introduction Abraham Lincoln, and I could find it. Yeah. He said the philosophy of the classroom in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that we're achieving this? We're not achieving it? We're far apart from it? We're close? What you thinking?
Do you want to take that first, Eden?
Sure. Okay, so I 100% agree with Lincoln on this. What we educate our kids today is going to reflect in our society tomorrow, 100%. As to whether or not we're close or far from this, I want to say maybe the middle, maybe both. I feel like there are two reasons I say that. One, because I think there's kind of a disconnect. Like there's kind of we kind of have, I want to say, an issue with education today. But that's a different topic. The payment education and students attending school and being interested in school is a whole different topic. And so I want to say yes, because on the other hand, you have students like me and Dylan who soak this up and who learn things and who want to make an active change, and that's what be carried into the next government, the next leaders of our society. However, like I said, there is a big issue with students retaining, like wanting to learn and wanting to learn more about that. And so in that way, I would say maybe not. So maybe a good middle.
Okay. Well, I like the quote a lot, but I think I look at it a little less optimistically, if I'm honest. The philosophy of the classroom in one generation will be the philosophy of the next. I feel like it should be like they should edit the quote to say it should be the philosophy, yada yada, in the next. But to be honest, I'm not convinced that the systems we have now make the philosophies change very much at all.
Right.
Yeah, because the classroom is, let's be frank, it's the setting where it's where learning happens. It's where philosophical ideologies, it's where they change. It's one of the primary places where that does happen. But I feel here in the Bahamas, we've kind of gotten into a habit of reinforcing the same cycle of what kind of things we talk about. Much of education is still, frankly, very colonial. Or neo-colonial, if you want to call it that. Right. If you want to argue that we're after colonialism or whatnot, with independence and whatnot. But I like the quote on principle, though, that I would love it if the classroom, I'd love it if everyone could have the experience I did in the classroom of changing as a person in the classroom. But I'm not sure that happens because not every student really thinks the class is like that. A lot of people think you go to school, take the classes, come out with a piece of paper, and then move on in the work life cycle. But
but unfortunately for me, in high school I wasn't interested in school, so I didn't pay attention in the classroom. So it was only until I went to university or junior college before university that I started to tune in and focus.
So I would say it's the same for me as
well. But I think that's where most of the philosophy comes from, right? That's where that's where we as people begin to form our own opinions about society and then take that into our careers. Because with high school and primary school, we're kind of being taught on one system. You're taught to think for the BJC, you're taught to think for the BGCSE. You're not really taught to think about things going on outside of that. So it is until you get to university and start taking the classes like psychology and sociology and English, then you begin to be like, wait a second, I don't like this. I want to think about this differently.
Actually, if I could bounce off of that, because you are a different major than I was, biochem. I still argue that even in biochem, there's a rife amount of opportunities for learning because that's what the classroom setting is dedicated towards. But I think things just how demanding a lot of people in biochem go on to become nurses or doctors and whatnot. I think extremely high demands of that have made it kind of more a obligation than a learning experience, I guess. But Yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
That's just
well, I guess it's Abraham's position, as I understood it, and it's only perspective because there's, to me, I don't believe in right and wrong. There's only perspective.
True.
Was that whatever we teach in the classroom is what's going to happen in the future? Like y'all said, in here, we don't seem to embrace new ideologies and so forth, and so we still stuck in a rut of. And I shouldn't say a rut because it was good for a purpose, a time, but it mightn't be the right philosophy for now, or the most productive philosophy for now, right? So, how has the political systems in the Bahamas historically overlooked or marginalized the youth voice?
Hmm.
Do you feel you have a voice as a youth, as a whole now? I don't mean just you two who on the screen.
The way this whole presentation looks, and this question appearing at the bottom, how has the political system historically overlooked the voice of youth? Historically makes it look like a trivia question. I'm not sure if you can really say historically, but I could definitely say without historically, like how is the youth's voice being marginalized?
Okay, so you say it's still happening then?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
To an extent. Do you want to take it?
I can try. I can't speak too much about historically, but I can speak about right now. One thing that I've actually spoken with someone about the other day is that our youth aren't, how do I word this? For example, aren't as active or aren't as active as they should be regarding the things that we want to change. And I'm solely speaking for university students right now because, like I said, truly high school students may not have been as exposed to things going on in society. We're not as active as I feel like we should be regarding things such as things that like we would like to have changed, such as the marital rape, such as gender equality, such as the rights of the LGBTQ, such as climate change, such as I know you have a few of us that who are awarded and who are in the front lines and actively fighting, but for the most part, most of us aren't we don't participate in the way that we should, and I think it's out of fear and out of lack of education. And also being stuck in like an ideal, stuck in what our parents have taught us, stuck in what society has taught us. But like I said, that's different. For the political purposes of it, a lot of persons are scared of the repercussions, scared of being arrested, scared that their voice is going to have a serious consequence. And especially for those that are marginalized by the political system, such as young males, young Black males in society who are already targeted, they're especially not as active about the things that need to be said because they're being marginalized already. They're already at a disadvantage than the rest of us. And yeah, that's my point.
Okay. Better than you, young black male per se in the country that you had on and everything. So are you profiled? Is that the right word? Profiled by the police?
Yes.
I'm sure I am. I'm sure I am by now. Like definitely. Very certain. I haven't said this before, but I'm pretty sure I would be like prime target for the police because of like climate justice advocacy and whatnot. I would say I'm pretty radical on that front. But looking at the question, like hearing friend talk about it, talking like acknowledging the aspect of like how does a political system overlook the voice of the youth?
Right.
Like I could have gone on a rant about like how the Bahamas is a very conservative culture that overwhelmingly favors like the people themselves favor the voices of older generations than younger generations. But like talking about the political system, I'm thinking like where's the political system's priorities? What are they overlooking? Like, as they're overlooking the voice of the youth, which, let's be fair, is like the majority, because there's more children in a society than, you know, older generations.
Right.
You know, what are they like taking their attention away to look at? And I think it's overwhelmingly in private interests, which definitely private interests. And what I mean by that is like corporations, corporate bodies, the McDonald's,
Right.
the hotels that want to set up shop on like the beaches and whatnot. Like, that's where the interest seems to exist in the political system, which, as we know, favors tourism and whatnot.
Right.
So, so thinking about it from that kind of way, it's like, yeah, like private corporate interests don't look out for anyone really. Corporate interests don't look out for like humans in general. Humans are like don't mean anything when they could be generating dollar income and whatnot, and that's where the priorities seem to lie. So yeah, of course, the voices of youth are overlooked because youth are going to be very critical naturally of like land, which we came into this world already with very little of to begin with, being like given off to private interests and whatnot. That's why they have to like shut down like, you know, voices of youth. Youth have like come into this world. I'm a young man realizing as I was getting politically socialized in my like psychology classes that I actually have very little say in what goes on politically in this country. So of course I'm going to criticize the system that's to be continuing.
Really, individually you might have little say, but collectively might be a different story, because back in the early 60s, still individually the people, the majority had little say, but when they got together, then they made changes. Cool. So what is the biggest challenges young people face in engaging with or trusting the political? That's what I hear all the time from my son. He's in his early 30s, and he always says that, you know, it doesn't make sense. I don't trust the system. They're not going to do whatever we say to do anyway, so why bother? Anyone?
Do you want to take that?
You go for it.
Sure. So, I don't know, just reading the question, my mind instantly goes on. I feel like I've attacked them too much in the last two. On to the police, goes on to the justice system in general, but mostly the different tiers of it. So I feel like our biggest challenge in trusting the political process is that, I don't know, maybe because it's okay. This is a tough one.
Question.
I want to say, I don't want to say corruption plainly, but I want to say you can't always trust our political system to handle things in the way they should handle it, because somebody always knows someone. There is always forces working that are sometimes outside of you. For example, I don't know if I should be mentioning this.
No, it's fine, because it might be outside of the
No, I did not get arrested. I did not get arrested, but I got into a car accident last year that landed me in civil court. And one of the things that I was very afraid of was that I knew no one who would, you know, like, that's the thing you're always afraid of. I don't know anybody. I don't know any connections. And thus the system is going to forget about me. The system is automatically going to treat me like the bad guy because this person has somebody in here that is on their side. And I think that's the biggest challenge that young people face, because we don't know anybody. Most persons that go through the justice system, I hate to say it, but we don't have the funds, don't have the access, don't have the network to know someone. And that's our biggest problem with trusting the political process, is that it's always, I don't want to say it's corrupt, because unfortunately that's our society. Our society today it's about, it's about, what you have access to. But I think I'd speak to that our main issue with engaging police, with engaging the justice system, is that it's not always going to be on our side, because we don't always have the support, have the help, because like I said, someone always knows someone that wants it to benefit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for the question. The first thing I want to say, especially to like any young people watching, is that you do have to engage with the political process. You don't really have a choice. A lot of people, like people around the world, yeah, but a lot of Bahamians think that like you can be apolitical. Yeah. A lot of people think you can like ignore politics, and that's not going to be something that like comes to bite you later. But that's just 100% not true. I have not voted yet. I do want to vote. Like I haven't gotten my voter's card yet, but I want to get that because it is important. Because let's be frank, politics kind of like governs what goes on. Yeah, and Bahamian politics, it is corrupt. Yeah, I'll say what friend was reiterating. What friend was saying. Yeah, it is. It is corrupt, and corruption is a strong word. Actually, no, it's a strong word that we've kind of like thrown around a lot lately. Yeah. Like I think most Bahamians, I mean, even like we can say it here on this platform. I feel safely, but most Bahamians agree that like the political process is corrupt. But what the biggest challenge is for young people is that we understand that quickly. We learn that very quickly, because if we're going to talk about like younger people versus older people, which I don't normally like to talk about because it makes it sound like they're two different species of animal or something, but if we're talking like younger people versus older people may like, I mean, I don't know if you could, sorry, this side, whoop, which side? This side, sir, I don't know if you could speak for yourself, but I feel older people have gotten more used to the system. Younger people come into it and understandably would want to like, you know, understandably more quickly we find issues, because as friend was saying above there, if you're on a court case and court cases, like the outcome is at least to some extent dictated by like who you know, what connections you have, like what, like, I guess you could say political connections in the court system, then that's obviously unfair to younger people, because younger people just don't like build the connections that the older generation have had. So
yeah,
in that alone, that's where like a lot of like favoritism, you can say, towards older generations tends to come up, which I don't want to say like that. I don't want to say like frame it as like older generations have like privilege, because we're all living in the Bahamas, which is kind of, as you say, in a bit of a rut right now.
We
have
the same rights, but that don't mean that you have access to the same rights.
Very true.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for me, it would be that I'm in the what they call the promise generation. So after you had independence, it was promised that you could be able to build this house with a white picket fence in the yard and a square deal and all these different type of things. And a lot of us just sat around waiting for this promise to come true instead of being active and going and getting it. As I would think that the younger generations now are being more active in wherever it is that they want. That doesn't mean that they engage in politics, and so from that perspective, my generation seemed to have some of the same thoughts. But because our parents are the ones who are in governance or in dominant in governance, then we have a connection. And then when you go down one to grandparents and grandchildren and to great grandchildren, then they become further removed from who is in governance today. And so then I guess it makes it feel even more so that you feel disconnected from the system and will feel alone when you get in those cold rooms.
Wait, before we change the question, can I add on? Because
sure.
I feel like maybe I drifted.
Really?
Y'all talking. I was like, wait a second. Maybe I approached the question wrong.
Really, kind of.
But
like an anecdote, but kind of painted it. But go on.
Yeah. Okay. So, adding on to the question as to why I think youth may not be engaged in the political process is also because I feel like our political system has been a back and forth between two main parties. Two main parties in which the youth have no education about their plans for our society, their goals, what they expect from us in the future, like how they're going to aid us in and build our society.
Or what the difference is.
Yes, what the difference even is.
Yeah.
That's a good start. What the difference even is between the two parties, and that's my personal quarrel. I haven't voted as yet. I don't have my voter's card, and I want to vote, but I'm deathly afraid of one. I don't want to pick a candidate solely for the purpose of, oh, my mother's FNM, so I'm going to vote FNM. I want to vote based on how this person is going to affect my society, my community, aid my community. But at the same time, there's also the fear of, okay, if I vote for someone that's going to aid my community, I risk allowing a leader of the Bahamas, a prime minister that doesn't seem to care for our society, you know? And I don't have any education on what their plans are. I don't have any education on if I can trust them, who they are. So I think that is another part of it as well. We're simply going back and forth between, oh, this person won this year, so I guess I'll just vote for PLP next year instead of understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe something to think about would be, instead of just waiting for them to push candidates on the electorate, you go and tell them what candidates you want, who you prepared to vote for, and then maybe that could change the paradigm from this 5 in 5 out scenario, right?
True.
Yeah.
So what steps can take to create platforms where the young voices can influence political decision making? Because you're saying that you feel isolated. I mean, that's my interpretation. It's just from it. You want to engage. Some of you are engaging, but you don't feel like you're engaged with it.
I mean, we're working on it.
Okay, that's
trying to create
platforms.
Let's go to another one while you work on that one. How can the educational system better prepare young people to engage critically and constructively?
Oh, I've got this one.
That's why I went.
Okay, so firstly, I think that our social study classes are, especially in high school, that we should be prepared from high school to talk about the voting process, and not just the voting process, not just how to vote, but essentially who you're voting for, what this party means, what is the agenda of this party. Like, I feel like by the time you get out of high school, most persons are around 17, 18. You're around the age to vote. Unfortunately, we know nothing. We don't know who we should vote for. Some people don't even know their constituencies.
Wow.
So I feel like
called me out, man.
So I feel like, number one, our social study classes should be more than the Lucayans, more than just our past, but also focus on our future, especially for those in grade 12 and grade 11. Prepare them, because once they get out of high school, they have a year or less to vote. Prepare them to vote. 100%. Okay, that's all I want to speak on for now.
Yeah, that was good. That was 100%. We know this. Education's probably never gonna be like perfect. You'll never like educate everyone of like, what they need to know in the future. But let's be real. I don't know my constituency that well. My constituency's politics or views and whatnot. I would like to have known more about that in high school, but I went to a private school where, of course, local politics maybe was not really the priority there. But I would say it can be improved in the sense that I would say that our education, our schools No, actually, when I went to UB and I started taking like indigenous psychology, well, even clinical psychology, Black psychology, that was when I entered an educational framework that seemed to have like a progressive purpose. That was when I first like started learning like how to really critically analyze society and the problems that exist. I feel like the education as is kind of like, education is not taken seriously enough here as something that like really moves things forward, more that something that like keeps the sort of wheels going. You know what I mean?
Babysitting.
Yeah. 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 It's
You have to
being
do it. You
taken
have
like
to do it, so just do it. Yeah. Doesn't
I think
matter
the
the outcome or whether it's going to change the mindset of people. Just these are the building blocks. You got to go through it, go through it. Is that what you're saying is the view of it?
the question itself almost answers itself. Like people should be prepared to critically and constructively engage with, I mean, not only politics but like social, like society and things like that in general. So, did you want to say something, friend?
Yes, to kind of bounce off of that as well, I also feel like, just as a personal opinion, persons, Bahamians don't gain the critical thinking skills necessary to not properly, but efficiently vote and efficiently engage in the political process, I feel like, until we've arrived at university, which still kind of bounces off your point, Dylan, and my point as well in preparing students in high school. But and this is my opinion, you start to truly gain critical thinking skills in university and college. I feel like I didn't fully develop my critical thinking skills until English classes where I had to do an assignment based on society, until I've taken sociology classes where I had to critically think about what's going on in society. And until we truly gain those skills, how can we be fully prepared to vote, because until then you're not truly sitting down and reflecting on the things that have happened in our society and the patterns that you currently see happening.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, folks, if you want to ask a question, just put it in the chat, and we'll see if these young people will be daring to answer your questions. So, do. So, what policies or initiatives would you propose to build greater trust between the young people? Not that one. That's the wrong one. Sorry. We finished with politics. How do systemic issues within the police force contribute to mistrust among young people?
Man.
I spoke too early.
Man.
I spoke too early.
Man, I guess you gotta wind it back.
Yeah.
Wind it back. No.
Yeah.
The last question did look actually interesting, but I guess if I may, I'll tie it off. I mean, I could like tie them both together, or I could just answer this one. Okay, I'll start with the police force one. Okay, how do systemic issues within the police force contribute to mistrust among young people? Here's the single biggest problem with our society today is that the people with less, like the more disadvantaged the person, the more, I mean, it's almost by definition really, but like the more disadvantaged the person, the more likely they are to be like targeted by like, policing forces.
Okay.
And younger people, 100%, younger people have problems with the system.
Yes.
Younger people have like little connections and whatnot.
Yes.
Younger people be broke.
Yes.
That's fair. I don't even know if older people are not broke at this point, but
Maybe broke.
Younger people, yeah. So this has just overwhelmingly made younger people a pretty just an easy target for the police. Let's be real. The police force, in trying to speak as lightly as possible as I can, they're a very, I guess, neutral to fault force in that they will target or they will like arrest anyone that is considered a troublemaker. And overwhelmingly, the youth are the ones who are dealing with when we're complaining about youth like have turned to crime and turned to robbery, like first of all, that's the minority.
Okay? Yeah, right. Yeah.
First of all, I haven't committed any crimes, at least that I can remember today. But like youth are more often than not forced into positions where policing seems to be involved, used against them. I know, just to give a shout out, not a direct one, but like I have a lot of like rap artist friends who've been like targeted by the police. They see the violence firsthand, and in these cases, even if they weren't like specifically targeted, the police brutality dealt towards them was kind of, just to be real, like they just kind of got away with that. And it's like, so we don't like, if we don't have like the means to like not be targeted by police force and whatnot, then you see where the mistrust comes from. I hope that helped. I kind of went on the side there.
Great.
But take that one.
I also want to say that maybe the systemic issues kind of stem from an abuse of power, is what I was thinking of. I want to say that just to aid on to Dylan's point about also mine earlier, about disadvantaged youth, especially, but a lot of youth being the prime target. And it's mainly because a lot of police feel like, or let's assume, in a hypothetical situation that potentially is real, that a lot of police officers feel like they're not in the higher ranks. They don't have the power that they feel like they need, and thus is taking this power out on persons that are more vulnerable, right? So just to put that aside, I also want to comment on the fact that a lot of police force officers, especially with the news headlines that have been happening recently, and something that I know to be true, just from hearing experiences, a lot of police officers, or let me say a lot of police officers, but I want to say that on the force, they're a family, they're a unit. There is nothing that you can do to one police officer that another police officer will not stand up for. That's their friend. That is their, what's the term? My friend is on the force. Comrade. That's exactly. And so another layer of that mistrust amongst young people is that no matter how brutal a police officer has been to you, no matter what they've done to you, and there are several cases, rape, murder, anything and everything a police officer may have done to someone, we can't, or victims can't then go back to the police and say you did this, because that is their friend, that's their person. So that's another layer of the mistrust as well. I want to say one layer, like I said earlier, was the abuse of power. And then once someone feels like they have a little bit of power, then that's it. They can unfortunately wreak the most havoc with that. But another layer as well is just the unity that's become a problem.
Yeah. Cool. Power does like consolidate in that kind of way, like that.
So what role does social and economic inequalities play in the strained relationship between young people and police?
Okay, young people and the police. That's interesting. I thought it was going to be young people and the older people, but I see we can pass like the two different species of age.
The three focus points for this discussion is the politics, the police, and the pulpit, because they are the ones who are most critically seen to be authority. And so it might be a common thread with authority more so than anything else, but I don't know.
Social and economic inequality play.
Do you want to take it first?
Nope. I need to think. I need to think.
Yeah, I'll I'll give it a try, and I'll try to like take my like too radical hat off, put it aside
Okay.
again. Okay, so social and economic inequality. There's a lot of it, so we can start from there. The strained relationship between young people and the police. I've heard. I remember hearing a quote that like the police really are security guards for the assets of the rich, and that kind of rung
Wow.
pretty close to home, if I'm being honest, because the police force is a government body, overwhelmingly, right? So just by its very nature, they have more power than what young people. I mean, police are given more power by default than I think the average young person has, unless of course you're young and you're entering the police force. But then, as friend said, like you can be in the police and not have like the kind of control or say over things as you'd want. Um, so in that kind of way, both young people and the police, like they experience social and economic inequality in that kind of way, where it's strange. Like the police, like the purpose of the police, like their job is to arrest people. That is pretty much it. Like,
Protect people.
so, like that alone, that has to reinforce the social inequality
Okay.
in that kind of way.
Eden, you have anything to add to that?
Yes. So when I first saw the question, I thought about two things. Number one is something that we discussed earlier with the profiling and stereotyping of those who are unfortunately are socially and economically disadvantaged. They're, like we said, targets, and so that already strains the relationship between young persons and the police, because if you're feeling like you're targeted for simply being young, for simply being in an unfortunate situation that you have no control over, that truly already damages any kind of relationship between trusting the police force and young people. But I also thought about how this may have come about and where this may have begun. In the English class, my English 300 class, we focused a lot on the prison industrial complex, but specifically on, this may be getting off topic, but also on the school to prison pipeline, and how police officers are assigned to schools, and how this kind of makes those who are students, especially who are socially and economically disadvantaged, feel as if they're already sort of in a prison, quote unquote, because police are constantly watching you. You're being pat down to walk into school. You are constantly harsh punishments such as expulsion, being arrested, all of this kind of stuff. And I can't help but think that maybe this begins the strain on the relationship between many young people and the police, because you've already grown up feeling like you're being watched, you're being targeted, you're being pat down to go into school. So who knows?
So does that mean then that the young people feel like they're living in a policing state?
Yes. Young people, we feel we feel pretty vulnerable to the police in general. I'm just gonna say that.
Wow.
I feel like one cannot. I have experienced, I've experienced my own version of feeling afraid when a police officer is going past you, and you're in a car with persons who they might stereotype, because you're afraid, what if I get pulled over? What do I do?
Oh, what happens?
Yeah.
Right.
And if I may
Go ahead.
jump onto that. Actually, I lost my train of thought. Never mind. It could go on.
Okay.
What I wanted to say was, we don't have a problem with police. Like we know people in the force, of course, personally. So we don't have a problem with them as people, of course. It's just the role of the police.
Right.
The role,
Right.
kind of by design, means that younger people are like more prime targets and whatnot. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Okay, and so are there successful policing models elsewhere that could inspire positive reform in the Bahamas?
Mm.
Are you aware of any? That does any of your friends around the world
Yeah.
talk about how they have such a cozy relationship with the police and
I don't know about
so
that.
forth? No. So I know you're on social media, so y'all talk to people all over the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I could actually answer this one because I recently took uh I took courses on this. On something called internationalism, which is this thing where
Okay.
you basically just seek solidarity with people around the world and stuff. So, and there are definitely, I don't know about policing models specifically, but there are countries definitely that currently have better like political models
Okay.
than we do. Like ours, let's be frank, ours, if you look at ours, you see like our MPs and whatnot fighting in the house and stuff like that. That's not, you know, you will have other countries where that they can communicate a little better, whatnot in those spaces. Uh, Successful policing models elsewhere. It's hard to say specifically. There are countries. There's what I wanted to say was there's a lot of countries that are more community oriented and whatnot. So the protection of the people leans more on the community than say another like a body, like a little army called the police. Riding through neighborhoods and whatnot, cleaning the mess and stuff like that. There are countries that have done a pretty good job of like making neighborhoods safe based on like the people like utilizing or giving the infrastructure where the people in these neighborhoods and whatnot can provide for each other. Other countries just like don't have such a high cost of living, so not as many people like have to turn to crime in order to
Right.
get by. So that's a basic thing. I remember talking to a friend at Toastmasters the other day about how if you paid everyone like what they needed to cover rent, then you would never see crime. Because why would they need to why would you need to turn to crime if you're being paid enough? So this alone, like a better model for society that doesn't need policing, because the police exist to arrest criminals. And if you have a society that like a model society that just by its nature doesn't generate as many I shouldn't say generate criminals, because criminals are people too, but like another society that like just pays people enough so they don't like have to be arrested for being homeless or something, then yeah, I don't know, does that make it easier for you to tackle that?
Yes. When I first read it and read Reform, I started to think about actually the prison system here. And in my English 300 class, once again, talking about prison industrial complex, we discussed other countries where how their reform system works. And one of them was Norway. I had to look it up just now. But one of them was Norway, and Norway's reformation system is
rehabilitation.
Yes, rehabilitation. That's a better word. Rehabilitation system was praised for being more humane, for truly embracing rehabilitation and not treating persons as criminals, as the way our society would think about a criminal.
Yeah, less punishment, more
Yes.
rehabilitation.
And even allowed them to take college classes, allowed them to get their education while serving their time, allowed them to go to, we allow them to go to work, but the work isn't simply minimum wage to below minimum wage jobs, like good jobs that would support them once they got out of the system. So yes, that is one of the many places that I truly hope that our system could model. Because unfortunately, I actually had inquired about whether or not some of our prisoners or persons in prison could get their GED, could get a college education while serving their time, because that is a great use of time. You're in there for God knows how long. You might as well get an education, get out, get great jobs, start life again. But unfortunately, it's not like that. So yes,
education.
they are, but
and would be considered productive. Yeah.
no.
Yeah, we don't have that, like, here in the Bahamas. We don't have that kind of mindset where we feel like inmates deserve to learn.
Yes. Unfortunately.
From there, like, I guess arguably we think that, like, punishing them and having them live in, like, be in these horrible prison conditions, is a learning thing. As our host just said, they're getting an education, but it's not necessarily the most productive one.
This question was written earlier, but having said what you said just a little while ago about the youth and stuff, I think I should change the question to be: do you think that many people, young people, feel disconnected from the traditional religious practices and teaching? Considering the statement was made that if you can't pay your rent, then you might resort to crime, kind of thing. So, is the church doing what it's supposed to do in building the character of people?
Do you want to take this or?
Sure. Okay, so the question is, do we think that many young people feel disconnected? I want to say more young people than in previous generations do. Do I think it's many, especially if there are young people currently living in the Bahamas? I feel like you would find more young people that have left to feel more disconnected from traditional religious practice than you do many here. That's just what I've seen, though. I know there are still a great number of young people who have disconnected from the traditional Christian practices and teachings, and a lot of us have kind of modernized the way we think about Christianity, especially in society. But I still see a lot of persons my age, persons older than me, even me. I still believe in Christianity, just not in the conventional way that it's being taught to us in schools and in church. But the next question you asked was, do we think that the church is doing enough to help? I don't know if I have an answer to that question, because in just observing both sides of the coin, on one side of the coin, I want to say no. I want to say that there's more that can be done to help persons in society. There's always someone that's hungry. There's always someone that's in need financially. But on the other hand, on the other side of the coin, yes. On the other side of the coin, which is that I grew up in church like many people. My mother is a pastor. So I fully have grown up in the ins and outs of several churches. On the other hand of the coin, a lot of church folks would ask, what more would you want the church to do? Right? Persons are saying like, oh, you're getting a lot of tithes and you can help with more of the tithes. But on one hand of the church, the tithes also goes towards keeping the lights on. The tithes also goes towards paying the members of the church. And then also the extra services they provide, such as food, distributions and all those extra stuff. So I don't know. I'm in a weird state, whereas I'm like, no, there's more that can be done. But
spending a lot more money on things like air conditioning and the rest of them that don't have any impact on what the church is set up to do. Right?
Very true. Very true. But also, would you want to go to a church with no air conditioning?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Bit. And the old architects and stuff used to build things in the country. My grandfather was a builder, and he didn't have any air conditioning in the house, and it had plenty airflow, right?
But
it's how you design things, so forth.
Yeah.
What did you say, Dale?
I can attest to that architect. I can attest to that architecture point because I took archaeology. I took architecture at UB. So
What?
You look like somebody who would have been into architecture. Yeah.
it looked like some really okay.
Yeah.
Okay. To this point, I'll answer the second question first, which is like, are churches doing enough? Churches are interesting. They kind of fill the void of like a lot of other things that we clearly need. Like mental health services comes to mind. Churches tend to offer like, some sort of like counseling service. And even when I tried like seeking like some mental health services or like some counseling services while I was at UB, I was referred to like someone who was also like in the church, but like kind of doubling as a counselor for the school. So the church is doing things by design. I think the question is, should the church be the one doing it?
True.
Is the thing.
That's a question also. Yeah.
That's a good question.
Since overwhelmingly the church, right there in the question, the church engages in pretty traditional religious practices. The church is not, I mean, you know why? Because like the Bible says this and that about how life should go. So this church, the Bible is to speak frankly, it's a book from many, many like years ago. So the values have changed since like the days before Christ and whatnot. The values have changed. So have changed from what they are now. Younger people, it's just it needs an update, I guess, or something. And I'm talking about
we need an update. Because we might be interpreting the Bible different from what the Bible really should be interpreted as.
Agreed.
That's always that question too, right? Just because these people put on robes and whatever don't mean that they really in tuned.
Agreed.
I want to acknowledge something that I think could look a little more favorable to like Christianity, because as in like to take all the blame away from Christianity itself as a and whatnot, because that is like our majority religion. But I feel like things like capitalism and like that everyone, like so many people want to like start their own church and stuff like that is kind of contributed to like the dispersion of like what the meaning of the Bible is and whatnot. Like the various, like everyone can have their own interpretation but still like run a church and whatnot. Like that kind of like I don't know, that kind of like freescape of religion while still like while still keeping the practices like in the realm where it can be controlling and whatnot, where like still like women, for example, are property of men and whatnot. Keeping that around is where like all these like everyone like has their own church. Like Nassau, of course, the New Providence has like the most churches per capita, like everything else. You have the most churches per capita, most churches and bars, most fast food places per capita and everything. But actually, churches, right?
Churches, bars, number houses, and fast food.
And Wendy's, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I guess y'all just dismiss all the rest. Just say Wendy's is.
It is Wendy's. I mean, okay, on one hand, it might be Popeyes as well, but there's a Wendy's on every corner. Not that I'm complaining, but there's a Wendy's on every corner. Also, to add to you, Dylan, I feel like that when I speak about that, I feel like that has less to do with like capitalism and more to do with like everybody wants. I always say when it comes to that aspect of it, people like more churches being here, that everyone wants to be a leader. Everybody wants to have power. And in our society, in running a church, you have power. Church equals power here. And so I feel like that has more to do with that and you gaining followers essentially and people believing what you say, you gain more power and more status in society. In that way, maybe we should ask the question, should churches have power here? But
that ties perfectly to the question though, because like the problem that young people have is like not having like enough, just I guess power. We came born into a world where you need power, right? And we just don't have that. So churches continue that. This is why I say the thing with capitalism, because capitalism is a thing defined by like consolidation of power. So,
but wouldn't the church be, of all the institutions, the politics, the policing, be the one that gives the youth the most access to put its fingerprints on what is happening? Would that be a fair statement or no? Or is the one that has least ability to change?
I would ask what you mean by that.
What do I mean by that? So you have to be elected to get into politics, and then you have to join the police force to have an impact there. But it's almost like you could just walk into church and say, "Oh, I want to be a part of this," and you're a part of it, right?
But that still doesn't mean you have power. You still have to go through the ranks. Essentially, when you think about power in the church, that's your bishops, that's your archdeacons, that's the persons leading essentially the church. You can walk in a church and be a member, but you still have no power. You're still abiding by the rules of the bishop, the apostle, the pastor, and what they say.
Why you can't walk in there and influence them so that then they do what that you as a body think? It's still a business. I mean, however we want to look at the church, it's still a business.
True.
So
very true.
I shrugged at the same time.
Deviate from the money too much.
Cool. Yeah, it's an interesting question. But I would kind of say what Friend said, which is that the church kind of replicates the sort of like power dynamics of other institutions in a lot of ways. So, which makes it difficult for younger people to get into, because church is all about like having ideologies and beliefs, and overwhelmingly our sort of like conscious center of gravity doesn't really favor what young people think, which tends to be overwhelmingly more progressive and whatnot. Like we just will not agree with everything from the Bible. That's just a fact. I don't think anyone does, because like I said, some churches make up different things. But go on. Yeah. Sorry.
Part of the challenge is that a lot of people believe that the Bible is a peer review, right? And so the Bible has so many different aspects to it that you can't really look at everything as a peer. And some is allegory, and some is history, some is prophecy, etc. But my personal thing is I just stick to the principles. When you get down to deeper stuff, then I tell people, no, you all could dwell in that and get lost in it. But I think that all of those are stories to support the principles. That's my take. I'm not saying anybody should subscribe to what I think. That works for me.
So
I think the key is to find what works for you. And it might be none, or it might be a lot. It's where it falls in the bricks. And then make a contribution towards what you need to make a contribution. So, what role could young people play, leaders play in shaping a church that is more inclusive and forward-thinking? Remember now, you talk about the Christian thing, the Anglican church had people like Bishop Eldon and William Thompson, and those. They moved mountains, right? So they weren't just they're putting on robes and talking in the pulpit and stuff like that. They were making things happen. Today, we might have more people we know about who cause strife in society because we just like to talk negative more so than anything else. Or the public like gossip, let's put it that way. So how do you think we, as young people, can make a difference, become leaders, play that role, in shaping what happens? Miles Monroe, for example, Dr. He didn't follow that system. He created his own.
Yeah. But if I may say, to kick things off, I haven't been in the church very much, like for a while. I'm not as familiar with that environment, but I did. From what you were saying, I do want to say that I need to educate myself on like church leaders, because I look up to Martin Luther King quite a lot, and obviously he was a Baptist minister. And Miles Monroe, now that you mention it, because when you mentioned like ministers who have like rocked the boat and whatnot, I couldn't think of any local But then I thought, then you mentioned Miles Monroe, and yeah, uh, I I feel actually, if I may just like finish what I was going to say, I feel like Miles Monroe, I guess he must have like navigated the thing we have with churches here, where like again, you can have like there's a lot of different churches, and different people can preach slightly different things. But Miles Monroe had a message that was helpful to a lot of people. Whereas I think other church leaders tend to lean more towards like overwhelmingly conservative values, like you need to be like a woman needs to be property of their husband, or like stuff like that,
Right.
which is obviously not inclusive. Telling women that they need to be like the property of their hubbies, sorry, husbands, is not like it. It's just not gonna work for today.
Yeah.
So the role young leaders could play in shaping the church is just having more young people who have the autonomy to like exercise, their values without trying to pandering to the church establishment as it is now, which is of course mostly conservative. Younger people are more like, I'd say, progressive. So you have younger people who are allowed to like kind of, the same way we already have been doing, which is like having a church and then like kind of picking and choosing which parts of the Bible you want to like adapt. Younger people, give them the freedom, it is inclusive, of course, and forward, which, do you want to take that?
Yeah, my answer to the question is that I honestly, if I were to think about the question, I would say the only way that we can have young leaders shape a church that's more inclusive and forward thinking is that if we start over, we need a church that is sorry, but in my head, I just think that the power of a church is not its leaders, it's its members. And unfortunately, members make up the power and the control, because at the end of the day, not the end of the day, but your leader says something that, or an interpretation of their interpretation of the Bible, and your members, however many them are there, soak it up. It's like a one mind kind of thing. I want to say, and so the thing about youth going into a church that is already set in their beliefs and set on this like one mind, one track, my pastor is right, what he thinks is right, and what his interpretation of the Bible is right, God speaks through him kind of mentality, is that we as a young people, no matter how much of us are there, can't go in there and say, we're going to change your mind. We could, it would be a huge fight and there may be a separation, but in that, like, that's just it. There would be a separation. We would have to start over. We would have to build a church that is more inclusive. We would have to build a church that is more forward thinking, and then use the strength of the members and strength of what we believe to then change things.
To track others, yeah. Okay.
Right.
Hitting that hard reset button.
Yes.
That's the digital world, the digital world is all about on, off, or reset, right? When my son, who's like you say, is early 30s now, played video games and stuff, or frog, whatever that man was, they pushed the things on the like I used to have the ABCs, but there's leapfrog, whatever.
Yes.
they when he got stuck, it just said reset and start over. He was in about fighting through the challenges of being stuck. You just say, okay. And that's why people think that's what it is now today, right? So we got a couple more questions here. So from your perspective, what would be a unified approach to empowering the youth in these spaces, the three spaces? That's the as a whole. Look like in practice. How would you envision this whole thing to look? Or how would you like to see it look?
So thanks for the question. By the three spaces, you mean in politics, the church, and the police, like the police
Police,
force?
yeah. The
Okay.
whole structure, not necessarily that you in those spaces, but how should they work together? How would you want them to work together to fulfill what it is that you want to see accomplished?
Good question.
That's a good question. I could take this first if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Eden. Okay. I saw a really good quote at Equality Bahamas hosted a 16 days series of webinars recently, and one of the speakers mentioned a really good quote that like you need to look at the. This is gonna go off on the side, but you need to look at the disabled community, and if you can make society comfortable for them, it's comfortable for everyone.
Yes.
And the same applies for the youth, because naturally the youth come into existing power structures uncomfortable.
Right.
Just inherently. Youth need to that's my alarm. Youth need to be educated and informed on how these systems work. You can't just like throw them in there and then like they're expected to play along with the game that has already been set before them, let alone penalize them for not following along with the game as it is, especially when like systemically there are problems with it. So if you want a unified approach to empowering youth in these spaces, you need to make the spaces like, you know, consider where youth are coming in from. To use youth as like its own term. Again, youth are just like, I guess, younger people and whatnot. They're humans just like us. I mean we youth, we're humans just like the older folk.
Everybody, yeah.
You know, but as you said, theoretically same rights, but you know, coming at it like we enter at a different point. So like in the church, I'm thinking in any one of those bodies, in the church, in politics, in the police, the old, like just older generations are considered as having more wisdom, as well as like more adherence to like what the status quo has been so far. So they just naturally get more respect, more power, more connections and stuff like that. Youth just do not have that. So these bodies, these spaces need to like be able to operate for people who are not like, you know, embedded in them already, which is again weird to say when you consider like the power inequalities and stuff like that. But you can take that from there if you want.
Sure. So I 100% agree. I think that would be the answer to my question as well. Education, and not just education on what is happening, like not on what has happened, just education on what's currently going on. But more importantly, I feel like education is too general. Specifically, I think we need to give our youth the space to critically think, the space to assess, the space to reflect. And it is only, I feel like, until we do that, that they're going to be truly allowed to change their perspective. And that's how we can become unified. We start asking the questions that need to be asked. We start debating. We start having conversations about what we feel is going on, and then listen to others' opinions and approaches. And in that is where we then can become a united front. And that's where change can happen in all of these fronts.
Cool. So that's a good way to segue right into this question. It says, what role then do the youth themselves need to play to bring about meaningful change in these areas?
Okay.
So you could
That's a good question.
elaborate on what you just said and add.
These are really good questions.
Yeah.
These are really good questions. Thank you for these.
Thank you.
These are questions. I guess you could say these are questions I wish that like the species of people called the older generation had asked me growing up.
Agreed.
By the way, the one time ago, the older people had all the knowledge, but I wouldn't suggest that they have all the
Don't think it's the same thing now.
No, because one time in the Bahamas, those who were in Parliament were considered the cream of the crop of the community who would have had all the businesses and stuff like that. And so they would have been looked up as the people with knowledge and wisdom and stuff. But now the majority of the people in the house, the majority of the people outside of the House Assembly have way more knowledge than the people in the house. So, but the ones in the house are creating the policy, and so it's now they really should be engaging the people outside to help them formulate the policy.
Right.
But then we go back to some of the things that y'all talked about already in terms of the colonial stigma of I'm now in charge, I have the big man syndrome, or whatever it is. You like they say in the colonial system, youth, children, speak when you're spoken to and not when. How is it go? Speak. Speak when you're spoken to and not before,
right.
something like that.
Seen and not heard or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. I used to get mad with all of those things. Yeah. Go ahead, Dylan. You spot to say something.
Yeah. I wanted to say, just to get it out of the way. Well, a lot of things out of the way. I wanted to include like reparations in the conversation at some point. So thanks for reminding me of the colonial legacy and whatnot. I want to say that I love talking to older people because obviously they've seen the years, they've had to survive the years of which, is honestly a task within itself. This country is difficult. So I love speaking to older persons. I'm curious if people in the house actually just like, is it that somehow their voices are getting like cut up in the system that's like gotten so messy, or are they just genuinely not like informed? What role do the youth themselves need to play to bring about meaningful change in these areas? Honestly, coming back to like what our friend Eden said up there, youth gotta get louder and stuff. Youth are not like engaging enough. It feels like a minority of cases when like people like me get to take classes that actually teach you to critically think about the system and whatnot. And then promptly like really want that change rather than the way I feel about the Bahamas is like young people, they're thrown into the world and it's like, okay, now you gotta go to school now, and you're like, why? You're like, don't ask questions, just do it. You go to school, okay, cool. And then after school they're like, okay, now you need to get a job. I'm like, what? Wait, what? Why? Don't ask questions, just you gotta work now because you gotta pay to survive and stuff, Oh, and we have the highest cost of living in the world, so that's another thing you have to deal with. Yeah, so make sure you work extra hard. Make sure aim for that bonus, and you're like, well, these job opportunities, they're not that good. I don't like these. Like, I don't want to work at McDonald's because McDonald's is a bad company and it's on a boycott list. Don't ask questions. Whatever. We just gotta keep the money rolling in. It can't keep going like that. That can't be the case. Youth gotta get louder. Youth gotta say like, I'm uncomfortable with this living environment for these reasons. Youth are not gonna be like educated necessarily on like why this environment is like, not working with them, and we need to work on that. It's gonna be difficult because the education system in and of itself is pretty divided. Going back to colonialism, since then, a lot of education happens in private schools. Like, I went to a private school, had the privilege to do so, but not. And then I went back to university, got more education to develop critical thinking skills. Not everyone has access to that kind of thing. So that's a challenge. But still, youth need to be like more vocal about what makes them uncomfortable. Need to criticize the system more. Need to normalize criticizing the system because it really is not there yet. And that is how we will have meaningful change in these areas, if we normalize the problems that youth naturally have, with the environment. That's what I have to say.
I would agree with Dylan 100%. Before I move on to what I want to say as well, youth, we aren't taught to ask questions. Just like he was saying, we were beaten into what I say goes. You just do what you have to do. So we were never taught to ask questions. And thus I feel like that rubs off on us now, because now youth aren't asking the questions they need to ask. Youth aren't criticizing. Youth aren't judging. So just to add on to that point, but to go back to my point, the role that youth needs to play, I feel, is seeking more education, and not just education in school, seek more knowledge, seek to know what's going on in society, seek to know what's happening in these systems, seek to know what's going on in the prison, seek to know what's going on in schools and how this can be changed, seek to know what's going on in universities, seek to know what's going on with immigration, everything that's going on in society. Just seek more knowledge. Don't stop learning, because in learning is how we gain our power, essentially. And the more you learn, the more you begin to ask more questions. And so that's what I think our youth need to do.
Straight up.
Yeah,
100%.
That's significant right there, and that could get the ball rolling. Get a couple of people with some dollars and behind you, and next thing you'll be prime minister.
Oh man, I wish that would be great.
If you wish it, you gotta put your mind to, as we say in the beginning of the show, and what we think we become. What we radiate, we attract, and what we imagine, we surely can achieve. So, it's stepping stones. It's basic principles. It's nothing. That's why I only follow principles. I've learned to discipline myself not to get caught up in all of the, what should I call it? I don't want to.
The nitty gritty.
The fluff.
The fluff. I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
That's a good word to use.
I think I know what you mean.
Yeah. So my last
principles.
Significant question here, because I don't want to keep you all night, because I have about 20 more questions to ask, but I can't.
I don't mind.
So, part 2?
Yeah. We could do a part 2. Yeah. How can the lessons from these spaces help the youth shape a more connected and thriving for future generations? Well, for your generation first,
but by these spaces, do you mean like spaces like this, or like in the previously mentioned?
We were talking about the position of authority more so than that's right, because that's basically what the 3 spaces represent. Our authority is treating the rest of the community in the Bahamas. And by the way, we have your perspective as a youth, but this applies to the majority of the middle-aged and older people too, because then we have classism in the society.
True.
There's a different animal altogether, which really is what controls all of these power structures.
Yeah, they do all work together.
But the youth is very much not heard in the spaces where these systems operate. By the way, that's what the show was set up for, for the youth to be heard. But somehow,
much
like
appreciated.
Y'all don't speak up. And so when I come and ask people to come in, they say, nobody can listen to me, so I ain't coming. And I'm like, okay,
really?
You gotta speak so people want to come. Want to listen? Yeah.
What? Okay. That's surprising.
This is 139 show, and we've had only a couple of youth been on speaking from their professional point of view, but nobody wanted to speak from this kind of position. I don't know if it's me, but I did bid before I come on the show.
It's fear. They're scared. We were taught to do this.
That's weird to think about. It's not that like coming from my position, like what I learned in school and whatnot, I like to be able to like use my voice in some way. Honestly. So yeah, it is honestly kind of, this is completely on the side, but it's hard to imagine that like a lot of youth are like uncomfortable. Not hard to imagine, but it's a shame that a lot of youth are uncomfortable to share what they're going through, because their stories are just as valid as anyone else. So everyone, okay, how can the lessons from these spaces, to actually answer the question, everyone's stories are just as valid, including the youths. I don't even know if I would say our voices are not being heard, because the challenges that the older generation are having with youth to this day, I think that kind of speaks to it kind of speaks to that the youth are a presence that needs to be heard. Even if our needs are not being met, youth are having so many challenges and difficulties to this day, whether it be not having like the say in these spaces, like in the church, in the police force, in politics, you know, and not having the say is, I 100% believe the youth not having the say in these spaces is what's creating the problems of today. People are like, youths are overwhelmingly uncomfortable with the way things are going because they just do not have a voice, and it is affecting, and it has to affect society in a certain kind of way for that kind of like sentiment to develop. So for a more connected and thriving 242, I guess it's kind of also just to get louder and whatnot. Youth got to get louder again. Back to that.
Yeah, I mean, you have a vision as to what you want to see the Bahamas to look like, right? So I'm thinking you have a vision. You have a vision, right? You do have a vision, right?
Yeah, it could be
You wake up in
so
the
much
morning
better.
and say, you want this?
It could be so much better. It can be so much better. Every day I ride my bike up and down New Providence, and I see more and more like Wendy's and whatnot being constructed on like patches of grass. I mean, patches of grass, just like on bush that I loved, like picking sea grape trees or whatnot from. I'm like, man, this place could be so much better. Like, why are we losing land to this, you know? And it can feel, and I guess to follow up on that, it can feel isolating because it can feel like as a youth that I'm that whole thing about like everyone's always cutting down their trees, everyone's like, you know, there's so much like construction and stuff like that going on. I sometimes feel like I'm the only one complaining about it. But I'm only thinking that probably because like the overwhelming majority of youths are encouraged in the society to like be silent and somewhat complicit. Really, everyone is like encouraged to be complicit in society. Really, everyone's encouraged to be quiet. The older generations that are in power in politics and in these spaces, they have all the reason to like not have everyone complain about the obvious like flaws in the society that we're living in right now. So really, everyone is like being quiet, but like the youths are particularly vulnerable. So it's very important for them to be more connected within these spaces where stuff is going on.
So I know it's not on topic, but so would that be a excuse me, a reason why the youth may, those who are, I don't want to say most weakest, but most vulnerable, let's use that way, gravitate towards gang families? And I specifically use the word families because I see gangs as families.
Gang families.
You mean because we aren't allowed, well, our youth aren't allowed to be like have a voice?
What Dylan just said, in terms of how they interact and being not having the voice, and so you're being afraid that when you do, something's gonna happen, and so when you go to the gang, you don't get that same pushback. Actually, you get an embrace. Come. You're my boy, you know, all kind of stuff, whatever.
I'll quickly answer because I want to hear friend Eden answer. I'm curious what you have to say, but because I'm not that. I mean, look at me. I'm a mixed race kid. I'm not that versed in like gang associations and stuff like that. But I will say that like humans in general, they will always like find whatever space they can, no matter what. So let's be real. For example, marijuana, obviously illegal, but does everyone you know, consume the cannabis? Yeah, they do. So, you know, people will find the spaces that they can. They'll find whatever solidarity they can, which is a problem sometimes when you like lean in the wrong direction and whatnot. You take out your energy in the wrong ways, but like a whole domestic violence conversation can come from that. But that's, I think, to answer your question, I think when you have the lack of options for the youth, then you know, if gang families are coming at them with open arms, then I guess I wouldn't blame them for embracing it. So
yeah, cool. Eden?
To answer that question, I agree with Dylan. I think yes. Friend Dylan, yes. I think I agree with his point. and I also think know a little bit. I don't know. Then again, I don't have much knowledge on gang families. I went to a private school as well, very very sheltered. So I have not much knowledge on that area, but in a lot of the conversations that I've been in, um, just being a part of gang families and gangs has less to do with finding some space to have a voice and to be a part of things and to have power more than it is just the things that like the environments and the things that people have been experiencing. They run to them for safety, they run to them for family, they run to them for connection. Not run, but they find safety. Yeah, right. So yes, it can be the case. Do I think that it's majority, like is you like majority like that? Not really.
No, yeah.
Mm,
Cool.
yeah. But
Awesome. Well, I think I got you all 30 minutes over time, right?
really?
And so we've
I didn't
now
feel like
have
it.
paused. Huh?
Did not feel like it.
Yeah. And somebody was nervous, but we won't say who. So we are paused now, and we have thought about it with intentional thought and consider where we go from here. So I have asked you all a wealth of questions, and we covered a lot of things. But is there something that we didn't elaborate on, like how you would wanted to elaborate on, that you might want to say, or just in general say to the audience out there, whether the youth, the people in Ghana, the people in Kenya, the people in
Mm.
France, New York, where else they say they watch from? Well, across the United States, one or two down in South America that I know about. What would you want to
Okay.
say to them who in your space, who which you would encourage them so that they could keep striving to be the best they could be?
Um, okay, I can start.
Go
Yes,
ahead.
absolutely yes. If there's any, whoever the audience may be, whoever you are, if you happen to see this video, if you're a youth out there, get involved with the climate justice movement and the conversation of reparations. 100%.
Okay.
Reparations, especially, is one I want to get in on. The conversation of reparations, I guess, as broadly as I can say, is that the countries like the Bahamas, the Caribbean, have been majorly set back because of hundreds of years of something called the, chattel slave trade.
Right.
Um, this is like I don't even know where to start. Like the numbers on this is that like we are owed billions, trillions of dollars, and yet currently, countries like the Bahamas and Jamaica and countries like that, they are in debt, which is the biggest thing for me. A lot of these countries are in debt, and it's very unfair for the youth to enter the world having to fight like someone else's debt. So I think all youth need to like enter that conversation of reparations because we need reparations is the way we start like getting our voices heard. It's the way we start like asking for uh it's the way we start asking for a world that we are more comfortable to live in. Um and stuff like that. Same with climate justice. The climate like, we in the Bahamas is a climate hot zone.
Right.
The most like besides maybe the Philippines or something, the most hurricanes happen here like in one season than anywhere or something like that. Whatever. And the
Yeah.
hurricanes are devastating. Did we come into this world with like factories and stuff like that pumping toxins in the air and like creating the worst hurricanes ever? I don't think so. So we need to start like getting involved with that conversation of climate justice to start protecting like climate hot zones like the Bahamas. Because we're not everyone has a car here in the Bahamas, obviously, but like we're not still not creating like, you know, the
Yeah.
the problem overwhelmingly. So get involved with
Miami
the
have what, 2
conversation.
million people and all of that. We don't even have 500,000.
Yeah.
And all of them ain't driving, that's for sure. Remember, we have a lot of those small fly swipe cars like mine. Like, I get a little small Swift, so
Yeah.
plenty
Nice.
of them on the road.
I mean, at least
But they
that's like
don't
a
burn them.
smaller
That's
car.
the thing.
True. True.
Yeah, that's what I'd have to say. Eden?
What I have to say specifically for the youth, also to the older generation as well, but specifically for the youth, is something that we touched on earlier, which is do not simply take what is being taught to you. Do not simply accept what you are hearing from even me, from even Dylan, from even Mr. Knowles, from ask questions, get involved, because persons in higher power, persons on the police force, persons in higher leadership in church, persons in the government want you to remain silent. They want you to remain ignorant so that you cannot question their decisions and how it benefits them. Get active. As boring as it seems, listen to the news, listen to what's going on. It's just, I hated that when people told me to read the newspaper and listen to the news, but it's so important that you get involved in what's actually happening in society, because so many things, so many wrongdoings are happening and you don't know. Get involved, and ask questions, and yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah, just have an
Thank you.
opinion.
You know,
Have an opinion,
yeah.
critically think.
And I was just gonna say, one of the things when you get involved like that, or just be engaged in absorbing what's going on around you, then you find out what it is that actually you are passionate about, that you want to solve,
Yeah.
or what makes you angry. Because
Exactly.
whatever makes you angry is what I believe the good Lord put us on this earth to solve. Right?
Yes.
That type of problem. So,
Hmm.
well, this has been interesting. No, this has been enlightening. For me in particular. Hope the audience out there have gained a lot. I like the way you thought, and I'm surely will look to try and reschedule for a later date to come back and talk on some other hot topics.
Yeah.
And how
It was fun.
It's fun.
Yeah,
It was
I enjoyed
fun.
it very much. Yeah.
I really enjoy talking with the both of you.
Same.
Yeah.
I love it when
Cool.
I love it when there's like a vibe.
So friend.
Friend. Yeah,
Friend.
Whoa.
You gotta add friend voice. You know, you can't just say
Yes.
Friend.
Yeah.
Friend, Mr. Knowles.
I meant to say comrade. That's what I've been saying since from time.
You know, one time ago, the people used to say comrade were those who you ever heard them talk about the vanguard, the political guard? You call it vanguard, or when you had Hitler and all those militant so-called communist groups and stuff like that. And they used to use comrade as
okay, yeah, communist groups.
If I remember correctly, right?
Yeah.
I was actually very enlightened to find out that we had a communist group in the Bahamas.
We do?
Yeah.
We used to.
We had.
No longer.
Is that why? Wait, okay. I have a quick
I need
question.
to connect you with my youngest son because he studied all of those things in his art programs.
Yeah.
And y'all would have a conversation and probably go on forever.
Yeah, I feel like we could have a conversation that'd go
on.
Straight up. They were very good questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
They were.
I tried to find questions that will make people think on the show. That's what I try to do, and also that will relate to your age group, which made me have to ask questions. I have to think more about what I was asking, so I could make sure I related.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why it turned out that way. Yeah. Cool.
It's just by circumstance. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
I was just gonna say, by circumstance, I'm not as familiar with the church setting, and I have not been. I mean, I guess go figure, but I haven't been in like the police force or in the political setting as much, so it can be a little hard to like gauge what those were like. But you can definitely comment on like how little representation, I guess.
Yeah.
We young ones are having in.
Right? Yeah. So you don't have to be involved in everything in order to comment on or to have a perspective on it.
Right.
Now, that's a challenge in the Bahamas, that they feel that if you're not the expert, you can't speak. You need to sit small, and that's a major challenge we have.
It is.
We go and get foreign people to come in and talk to us before we talk to our own because of that.
Man, Straight up. And we
That's a
have
show
like,
by itself. So think about it. Think about what you think we should talk about next time, and then we'll come back and do that.
yeah.
All right.
Like 10 topics right
Cool.
there.
Yeah, write them down. It's my memory.
Thank you, Mr. Noakes.
Yes, thank
You're
you.
quite welcome. You all enjoy,
Mr. Happy
and I'll
Nose.
be in touch.
Yes. I hope the conversation made you happy.
All the time. Love it. Just love
Yes.
getting more knowledge in my little brain. Yeah. See my head starting to vibrate.
Oh yeah, I noticed.
Great.
Yeah, it's like a couple centimeters like larger since the start of the call. So
I think that's the light burning in my head.
think so? No. No.
I'm joking. Yes. Awesome. So the next time we'll talk later. All right. Peace.
All right.
Okay. Yep.
Have a good
night.
one. Have a safe holiday.
You too.
Yep,
And if I
have a
don't
good
see you
night.
before, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, whatever terminology you
Night.
use. Yeah.
Yes.
Same to you.
Watch out for Junkin.
Thank you.
Watch
You will.
out for Junkanoo.
Yeah.
True that. I will watch out.
You will.
Wrath of Junkanoo.
I really hope it happens this year.
It will. Don't worry. Junkin won't stop.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, they're fighting
All
over
right.
it. But...
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Yep.
Good night.
So you've been watching Something to Think About with Dale Happy Nose, and we've had a nice conversation. Nice would be an understatement. But hopefully you will learn something from it, and you will be able to use it to help you become better engaged with the young people when you move around. And if you're young, help you figure out what you might want to do in order to engage the older people and the systems and the structures that is out there, so that you can have a better, more useful engagement in life, and you don't feel so threatened all day long by authority and whatever else is out there. And maybe in the whole process, the way we talk will become better. The socializing and what have you. One of the things I think is to just find a niche and dive into it. And as you move, you might buck up, but you fall down. The little children, they fall down. Babies, they walk 2 steps, a step and fall down and get back up. So we gotta be a baby in something at some point. So the next time, we'll be back next week. Same bat channel. Peace.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative 242